Hello, my name is Dr. Vary Towler, and this is one of 4 short webinars developed at the University of Dundee about developing your research ideas with a perspective on enterprise. The series of webinars covers where your ideas come from and how to develop these ideas to be able to take them further and perhaps fund them or develop your ideas into something more. This first webinar will focus on ideation or idea generation and applying divergent thinking at this early stage of a new idea. Giving ourselves space to explore new ideas in a divergent thinking space is a good strategy because one of the things that we tend to do when we have new ideas is to try and close them down immediately and tell ourselves that this idea will fail before we've even had a chance to map it out, or perhaps not even given ourselves the headspace in order to have new ideas in the first place. Ideation is one part of the design thinking process, which asks, how might we? How might we solve a particular problem? For example, how might we solve climate change? Design thinking is a good approach to take for coming up with new ideas, and many companies use this strategy to innovate new products and services. In this short summary, I will help you to think about where your ideas are generated and where you feel most comfortable having those ideas. Secondly, we'll look at 3 techniques that you could use as part of your idea generation to help develop a creative mindset. So when you have ideas, how you take something that is the germ of an idea and start to develop it further. And the third thing I'm going to do is summarise some thoughts around what you could do next to further your idea development and how you can feed your creativity to develop your ideas. Also to consider where you record your ideas when they do come to you. And this is known as innovation capture, and it's an important part of documenting the development of your ideas in case you need to prove in the future that they were in fact your idea. So where do your ideas come from? The first thing I want you to think about is where your ideas come from. So this could be research ideas, this could be ideas to do with your work or your life, how your creativity manifests itself, and how you have ideas about the work you do and the research that you're involved in. So I'd like you to think about different aspects of how you develop your ideas. Firstly, thinking about when you have your ideas. Do you have ideas in the company of other people? And do you actually have most of your ideas when you're with people who you either consider to be creative or consider to fuel your creativity, and you always come away from those conversations thinking, yes, gosh, I always have good ideas when I'm with that person, or when I'm in that meeting, or when I'm with those particular people? Or alternatively, do you have your best ideas when you're having some quiet time, when all the noise has stopped? And I don't just mean physical noise, but perhaps the noise from things such as you've got a long list of things to get done. Do you have your best ideas when you have some quiet headspace? For most of us, it'll probably be a combination of the two, but we'll start in a place where we feel most comfortable. So for instance, you might have some of your best ideas when you're out running, or you may have your best ideas when you're in the shower, or you may have your best ideas as I do, I know, when I'm sitting on the train or driving my car. So one of the things I know I need to have is some quiet mental space in order to have ideas. As well as this, I know that I can have some good ideas when sparking off other people and having those ideas in conversations with a wide variety of different people, perhaps from different disciplines or different backgrounds to myself, who bring different perspectives to the conversation. So my first question to you is to think about, where do you actually do your thinking? The second thing I want you to think about is in terms of where your ideas come from. Do your ideas start by being very small things that you then build on and grow and develop? So you might start with a germ of an idea that you then work on developing and making that grow and develop it further and make it into a larger idea, either in one sitting or by adding to that in various different idea phases. Or alternatively, do you start from the idea having a concept and start by having the big ideas, and you don't know what the details are going to be until you've had the concept idea, and then you start to fill in the gaps and start to build the picture that sits underneath the context? The next thing to think about is how you have your ideas, and then do you want to plan them straight away? So you're keeping your ideas open to start with, but immediately want to get into a planning phase with your ideas, which means that you're starting to think about closing those ideas down quite quickly. Or perhaps you're the kind of person who, at the other end of the spectrum, is constantly having lots and lots of ideas and is not necessarily planning around any of those ideas, but generating ideas on a regular basis, collecting data to help develop those ideas, but perhaps not taking those to a planned phase. Both of those approaches are equally valid and very useful as far as idea generation is concerned, but they both have their challenges in terms of the next step, where you want to develop your idea into a plan and take it further. So those of you who are perhaps thinking, I always try and close my ideas down and try and have a plan around my idea quite quickly, might want to focus on keeping things a bit more open-ended. And for those of you who have lots of ideas, generally one of the questions that you might ask yourself is, how am I going to plan that and take that to a next stage? As far as idea development is concerned, the take-home message from this particular video is about being comfortable with where you develop your ideas, knowing where your ideas come from, and also making sure that you have the time and space to have ideas and the people around you, if that's what you require, just to be in a stage where you have ideas. Pause the video here and write down in the accompanying workbook where you have your best ideas, who you discuss your ideas with, and when you have your best ideas. I'd now like to highlight 3 techniques that can be used in the process of idea development. The first one of these techniques is mind mapping. For those of you who use this already, you might want to fast forward, but for those of you who don't know about it, the concept of mind mapping is where you're trying to create a map of your idea and the things that you have in your head to start your idea off, but also how your idea might develop. You'll need a large piece of paper and a pen for this. So start off by putting your core idea in the middle of the page, and then think about the spurs and the different aspects of your idea as they develop moving outwards across the page by taking one spur of the initial core idea for each different part of your idea. This is a useful technique for idea generation, just from the point of view of trying to size up how big an idea is. It helps us to see the scope of an idea on one page and the connections between different parts of the idea. By the process of taking it out of our heads and onto a piece of paper, we can already start to see how much we know about that particular idea. And by committing it to paper, and not by sitting in front of a computer and trying to commit it in Word form or straight to the screen, it allows us to keep the idea open. Because one of the temptations of having it in a digital format on a screen is that we want to start editing it. So allow yourself at least 10 minutes or so to create a mind map of all the different aspects that are involved in your idea so that you can get going and start to size the idea. The second technique I would recommend is one called free writing. I've used this as a way to get the contents of my head out onto a piece of paper, and I use it when I need to write a blog, for example, because this is something that I procrastinate doing. It's a good technique to get over writer's block. And I think it's a good technique where idea generation is concerned, because sometimes it isn't until we've written and read what we've written that we find out what we think about a particular area, or see the flow of where your ideas are going during the writing. So free writing, what is it? Well, it's about a certain specific amount of time that you've set yourself aside, maybe 3, 4, or 5, maybe 10 minutes, but probably best to start with 3 minutes. You then just take a pen and paper and start writing with your given topic in mind. For example, you could begin, this interests me because, or this is something that I think. So you've got your first few words down. Perhaps they're the same every time, and then just write on and continue writing after that. The writing is not about punctuation, it's not about grammar, and it's not about spelling. It's purely about taking what is going on in your head and committing it to the page straight away, like a mind dump onto the page. It's not about you editing yourself, and you're only writing in one direction. So maybe starting with something like this for about 3 minutes means that in fact you're sitting down and writing. And you often find that you're there for longer than 3 minutes, but 3 minutes is a good place to start. And your writing might not be your thing as far as developing ideas are concerned, but it might be helpful for you to give it a try just to see how your writing develops, or how your writing brings out your ideas during the flow of what you're saying, and to be able to look at it later on and perhaps write it up into an idea process. Pause the video here to have a go at the free writing exercise. Choose your topic and set a timer. The third technique that is quite useful for idea development is when you've got the germ of an idea, or perhaps the concept of an idea, and start to think about a technique called SCAMPER. SCAMPER is an acronym for a number of questions that you can ask yourself in terms of how you look at your idea. The S stands for substitute. Could there be something in the product or process or project that you have now that you could substitute to take you off in a different direction? The C stands for combine. Could you combine all the things involved in your ideas that you could put together in a way that perhaps hasn't been done previously? The third thing is adapt. That's what the A stands for. Is there an element of your idea that you could change just slightly that again would take you off in either another direction or make your idea a different one to the one that you'd had originally, and perhaps make it more feasible or more doable? The M in SCAMPER stands for modify. And again, is there some part of the idea that you could modify, that you could change to give yourself a different outcome from the idea? Is there something that you could change with your idea to put it to another use? The P in SCAMPER is for put to another use. Is there something for your idea that in fact you could take away? So the E in SCAMPER is for eliminate. What would you take away from your idea that again would either change it or generate something new as a result of that? And the final letter in SCAMPER is for reverse. And again, looking at your idea, is there something you can look at from a different angle, or something that in a process that you're involved in that you could look at in reverse order to see it from a different angle, and again, generate that creativity and move forward. Finally, in this session, I would recommend that it's really important to have somewhere to keep your ideas. In my own experience, ideas come from the most random of places. So sometimes reading much more widely than my subject, reading things from the newspaper, journals, different articles and magazines, or just observing different things means I've got a wide breadth of a view to be able to get ideas from. But I need somewhere to keep those. So one of the things I do is keep an ideas book. It's something that I can flick through to know that that's where I kept that article or kept that reference, because it might have come in useful later. So have a think about where you might keep your ideas. If your ideas come to you at night, perhaps you should keep a notebook by the bed for jotting down ideas. The second thing, as far as reading widely is concerned, is also looking at things from different disciplines, or looking at how other people suggest that you either develop ideas or how their subject combines with yours. One of the references that I'm going to recommend for you is the Do Lectures, and the website's on the screen. The Do Lectures are a rich source of information about how people have taken a different view on life to develop something, and who are willing to share the way in which they've done that with a number of other people. The Do Lectures website is full of short films of people doing just that. And my final point in this session is to think about when we're creating ideas and when we're in the divergent space that is having ideas, putting things perhaps randomly together, thinking about things that are not connected to our work and then making that connection, is about creating the time and space regularly in our lives to have some creative time and space to be able to do that. And making time for different things is a really challenging thing for all of us, but try to find your idea time, find your idea space, and actually make it a practice for yourself to have ideas and hold yourself in that divergent space for new ideas to flourish. Record in the accompanying workbook where you plan to document your ideas. Thank you.